So without any further ado now, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Delighted to introduce Paddy Austin from the Galway University Foundation. And Paddy is overall Programme Director for the Development of Mainstreaming Programme. And thanks very much, Paddy, for being here. And I'm sure we'll give a big welcome to Paddy.
Graveyard shift, everyone's dying for lunch and there's me between you and lunch, so apologies for that. Fortunately it's a small 15-minute shift, so thanks Ashley for keeping me out to short time. My role here is really just to comment on the implementation so far of the project. We're 2 years on, pretty well, I know a few months and we'll be at the end of the year, and we've 2 years to go. And just before I really comment on that as an external person, maybe just give you a quick overview of the grant and what it involves and what it requires of TUSLA and the Charlie Foundation. It's a 10 million grant, as you all know. Initially over 3 years, we very quickly realised we wouldn't do anything close to finishing in 3, so we moved it out to 4 years. It's due to end at the end of 2018. And it provides the means through which TUSLA can implement new national practice models and intensive implementation of a nationwide programme to enhance area-based approaches. Those are its two key enabling functions. And it allows TUSLA to build the interagency and intra-agency capacity to implement key practice and process changes. It's worth pointing out that the sponsor is Fred McBride, so the buck stops with him. He, as Chief of Operations, was the sponsor, but as he took over his new role, he committed to continuing on as the sponsor, which I think is an important message in that it ensures that the programme is embedded at the highest level within TUSLA. So I'm very encouraged by that. The Galway University Foundation that I represent is the management, monitoring and fiscal agent. So we stand on the outside to some degree, but I will say that TUSLA to now has been one of the most open organisations to have worked with, which is a compliment to all of you, and it's a reflection on, I think, the intent that people have in terms of this programme. So while we're on the outside in many ways, we feel very much part of the process, and we remain committed to it. And as has been mentioned by Carmen and Caroline, the evaluation and formative support is by the Child and Family Centre in Galway. So just those organisations, as you can see them there, they have different functions. TUSLA primarily is the implementer. PCYE stands in the background and offers support. Atlantic Philanthropies are providing funding. They are coming to an end in Ireland, so their function as such will end, and the foundation will step up in a more proactive role in terms of funding and financing going forward. Evaluation and research is by Child and Family, and altogether we make up the implementation sort of support team around TUSLA. I put this up really to confuse you because this is an illustration of what a mainstreaming programme looks like. In previous jobs, I would have managed very large projects and you'd have had a very hierarchical structure around implementation. And I'd be very interested to get comments from Helga on whether an embedded program like this has more chance of success than a very hierarchical type of implementation type team. I'm not sure yet whether this is the right model. It's the model that's there. And what it shows is that there are various functions that the program is trying to deliver on, but it's delivering through existing systems and trying to embed the program within the systems of the varying TUSLA, with the objective of ensuring that whatever happens in the implementation can carry on after the implementation is over. We had many discussions about it, myself and Ashley and Fred and others, as to whether this is the right model. It fits at the moment. It's not something that I can say is successful as yet, but it's certainly working through. I won't go into detail, but as I said, I hope it has confused you enough as it confused me when I first looked at it. But before maybe giving those comments that I give you, I just want to quickly talk to you about the 3 long-term, 5 medium-term outcomes. And while it might be too early to comment on these, because most of these outcomes, as child and family would consistently say, will only begin to become apparent after the program is complete. Nevertheless, it's worth just referencing them. So the transformative change, and that's the key sentence, transformation into the policies and practice, so it cuts across all parts of the organisation, and a shift of budget, and that is something that I've been encouraging child and family to work with us very hard on, is to give us a baseline or a reference year for which we can use to see if a needle is shifting from a current level of spend across the organisation to a new level of spend that will prejudice prevention, early intervention. So that shifting of the needle is something that we need to track, and we're getting close to getting budget information for the 2015 reference year, and we'll use that as a baseline to see how the needle is shifting, if it is. And then the third is to look at the best practice model nationally and international. So this program itself is designed and set up such that child and family and TUSLA can hopefully say at the end of it that it is a best practice model for change and implementation. So quite hard outcomes to achieve, but I'm sure we'll get there in the end. In the medium term, I think we can begin to kind of look at these in a bit more detail. The prevention early intervention system is operating effectively. The commissioning, which is a massive piece of work, as you all are aware, is rigorous and evidence-informed and privileges prevention and early intervention. A strategic approach to parenting, which is delivering better practice and better outcomes. Participation of children, and then finally the children and family are increasingly aware of available support. So while I can't say we've achieved them because they're medium term, I can certainly say that the enablers are there in terms of moving forward on these. And I've seen a huge amount of energy and drive in trying to achieve these outcomes within the life of the program. As I mentioned, it cuts across operations and policy, and some of the policy objectives of the grant were to develop a common and consistent language and to share that with partners, so that at region and area level there is a consistent standardized service. So that's something that, you know, it can easily be overlooked, but it's very important that those policy objectives are kept at the focus of the program. And just to move on quickly, the overall imperatives, and this is where we begin to talk about the new language around prevention and partnership and family support. TUSLA needs to think differently and act differently. It needs to shift the bubble, the needle, that's the middle bubble, and then it needs to look at prevention across the continuum of care, at the low, the medium and the high. And certainly within Ashley's team and within the wider TUSLA organisation, there's strong discussion now around that process of looking at prevention at all levels across the continuum. So that's where we want to be, and you've asked me in this role of a reflection of how we're doing. And I will honestly say that progress is good. I say that at every working group meeting because it's on the basis of continuous engagement with the teams in TUSLA, and a reflection of the energy that goes into their work. That being said, you know, and it's worth referencing some of the milestones that have been achieved, because often halfway through a program you can overlook the progress that has been achieved. As Jim mentioned, you know, we've got 64 new positions into the system, and that is positive. That's on top of 30 additional posts, or more than that were funded by the project on the basis that they would be permanent positions taken on by TUSLA after the project continued. So that's a significant increase in HR, which needs to be recognised. The continuum of care, low, medium and high, is being instituted as the basis for preventative programming, and that's very important. Evidence is being discussed as an issue, and that's something that is a key challenge for everyone, but it's certainly there. National practice models are being developed across this continuum, and that's very important. The approach to commissioning is firmly on the agenda. I can say that a huge amount of work has gone into it, and the pilots and the related work around developing a strategy and a commissioning toolkit are also really, really important. But there's a big piece of work around getting that moving forward. A new data and information hub project has been finalised through discussion with DCYA. That's $250,000 to establish information and data hubs. Basically geo-mapping systems that will allow citizens to plan better and more effectively, and that will be kicking off in January. The participation strategy is there, and an alternative care strategy is being developed. So those are some of the milestones. There's many more, but I just thought I'd put up a few just to refresh your minds. And then just before I finish, maybe I'll just talk some of the challenges that are ahead. Jim said there was 50% of the HR requirement. Well, there's another 50 to go. So that's a challenge that we'll be looking to get solutions to over the coming years. But it's a progressive process, and we know it's an incremental build, so that's on track. The question of mainstreaming evidence-based programming is a key challenge. Anecdotally, I don't think any of us could say that we would know how much evidence programming we're funding. I wouldn't say it's more than 5% of programming. So actually being able to say that we stand over an evidence base is a tough challenge ahead. And we need to look at ways of building the evidence base progressively. The 5 principles of commissioning that are in the draft commissioning strategy and the learning around the pilots, that really needs to be planned forward as we move from the pilot phase to the national phase. And there are big challenges around that. And engaging with the community and voluntary sector in getting those new approaches and new principles across the line. I think as well, the challenge of tackling prevention at the high continuum of care is a real challenge, and I'm really heartened by the work that Jim, Ashley and others have been doing in terms of developing creative community solutions as an approach on a pilot basis next year again. But it's very important that, referencing what Fred yesterday saying, you can spend on this side if you reduce spend on this side. But I think if we can spend on prevention at the high level, we can reduce the spend on residential care and so on. But it needs to be tested, it needs to be really thoroughly thought through. So that's a key challenge ahead. The alternative care plan that's developing, the alternative care strategy that's developing is one step, but I think we're quite behind in terms of moving that forward and trying to give it teeth in terms of an actual plan. So that's another big challenge. And something that's very close to my heart and I'm working on a lot now at the moment is looking at securing funding to continue resourcing the PPFS work beyond the life of the programme. A couple of other people I've spoken to have said, the importance of funding is key in getting change to happen. And small bits of money can make a huge difference in areas as they put in new systems. So it's something that I think we need to look at early to resolve problems that may come in the future if funding changes. And we're looking at sort of issues around national lottery funding, establishing preventative funds, and it's something that we need to proactively discuss. So the other one then is embedding prevention within the total organisation as a whole and getting that concept across. Those are challenges. None of them insurmountable. They require work, they require effort, and I'll finish, because I've got a minute I see in the corner of my eye. I'll finish by saying that I'm really heartened by the fact that there is energy, there's intellect, and there's a huge amount of drive going into this. And for me, as a semi-external person, it's great to see that. So I'll finish by saying a big thanks firstly to Ashley Gillen, who, as you know, is the kind of sponsor for this in terms of driving it forward on a day-to-day basis. Thanks to her team, and a big thanks to TUSLA as a whole for working with me and allowing me to be part of your journey, and I wish you well. I hope it goes well. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thanks very much, Paddy, for that. I think very fitting summary of where the programme is at and some of the challenges of where we have to go. And the presentation, thank you, has set it up very, very well for the panel that we're going to have very shortly. We're all here in the room as part of this process. None of us are passive agents, we're all active members involved in the implementation, evaluation, management, or some mixture of that process of the programme. So we're all here with a vested interest in working together as best we can to learn from progress to date and to do the best we can in terms of moving forward. And that's really what the panel discussion is going to aim to focus on. Now, before I organise that, just a few practical housekeeping matters. So first of all, you have evaluations in your packs, and the organising team would really, really value you taking time before you go for your lunch to fill out the evaluations. A great deal of work, I know, has gone in from the team to making this a meaningful 2-day workshop, and your feedback will be very valuable, as we will continue to have these throughout the next few years, I presume. Wasn't sure, but yes, of course. In terms of starting the panel, what we're asking tables to do now is taking on board what you've heard throughout this morning in particular, and the themes that have been emerging, and in particular sort of keeping a focus on sort of some of the points that Paddy was making to help focus our minds in terms of what this is all around. Words like transformation, words like culture and organisational change, practice and process change, implementation, innovation. This is what we're all invested in the middle of a process which is all around working towards achieving better outcomes for children and families. So the panel discussion, the purpose of it is to have a chance to process the content through your facilitator at your table. If you could agree 1 or 2 comments that you would like to make to the panel. I'd like to invite David Thornton to come back to the panel, and also I believe Jim Gibson is going to join us for the panel, and thanks very much for all the speakers for staying on. And Cormac Quinlan is also going to join us for the panel. Thanks very much. So if you want to make yourselves up to the panel, if the groups each want to take maybe 4 or 5 minutes for you to have a short discussion with your facilitator, identify the comments and or questions that you want to pose to the panel, and all focused on helping us, I suppose, to take through key learning messages onto our next cycle.